The bustling atmosphere of Mel's Diner in West Hollywood was exactly what Ozzy Osbourne needed on that quiet Tuesday evening in March 2012. After weeks of intense recording sessions for his upcoming album, he craved something normal, something far removed from the glitzy restaurants and exclusive establishments that typically populated his social calendar. Sharon was in London handling business matters, and Ozzy found himself alone, seeking the comfort of an old-fashioned American diner where he could enjoy a simple meal without fanfare or pretension. Mel's Diner had been a fixture on Sunset Boulevard since 1947, one of those timeless establishments that had somehow survived the constant changes of Hollywood while maintaining its authentic character. The red vinyl booths, checkered floor, and chrome fixtures told the story of countless late-night conversations, first dates, and weary travelers seeking comfort food at reasonable prices. It was the kind of place where celebrities occasionally appeared, but were generally left alone by both staff and patrons who respected the unspoken rule of allowing everyone to simply be human. The diner had also become something of a sanctuary for immigrants seeking the American dream, a place where hard work was valued over social status, and where people from dozens of different countries worked side by side, united by their shared determination to build better lives for themselves and their families. The staff spoke a mixture of languages during busy shifts, creating a multicultural symphony that reflected the diversity of Los Angeles itself. Ozzy had chosen a corner booth toward the back of the restaurant, hoping to enjoy his meal in relative anonymity. He wore dark sunglasses despite the indoor setting, a baseball cap pulled low over his distinctive hair, and casual clothes that helped him blend into the diverse crowd of late-shift workers, students, and night owls who frequented the establishment. The familiar sounds of sizzling grills, clinking dishes, and animated conversations in multiple languages created a comforting background that reminded him of his own working-class roots. If you're finding this story meaningful so far, please consider leaving a like to show your support for stories about unexpected kindness and the power of generosity to transform lives. His waitress for the evening was a young Brazilian woman named Lucia dos Santos, who appeared to be in her mid-20s with warm brown eyes that seemed to carry more weight than someone her age should bear. She moved through her section with practiced efficiency, but Ozzy noticed that beneath her professional demeanor was an exhaustion that went beyond the typical fatigue of someone working a long shift. Her English was accented but clear, spoken with the careful precision of someone who had worked hard to master a second language. Her uniform was impeccably clean and pressed, her dark hair neatly pulled back, and her smile was genuine. But there was something in her eyes that spoke of struggles and responsibilities that extended far beyond the borders of this small diner. Lucia had noticed the man in the corner booth when he'd first arrived, recognizing something familiar about him, despite his attempt at disguise. Having grown up in São Paulo, listening to rock music, a passion she had inherited from her older brother, who had introduced her to Black Sabbath during her teenage years, she was fairly certain she was serving Ozzy Osbourne. But in her 3 years working at Mel's since arriving from Brazil, she had learned that the best approach with any customer, famous or not, was to provide excellent service while respecting their privacy and treating them with the same dignity she hoped to receive in return. "Boa noite, good evening," Lucia said warmly as she approached his table with a menu and water glass, her accent adding a musical quality to her words. "Welcome to Mel's. Can I start you with something to drink besides water tonight?" "Just a coffee for now, love," Ozzy replied, his distinctive Birmingham accent immediately confirming Lucia's suspicions about his identity. "And take your time with the menu. I'm in no rush tonight." As Lucia brought his coffee and took his order, a simple burger and fries, comfort food that reminded him of his working-class roots, Ozzy found himself observing the young waitress more closely. There was something about her demeanor that intrigued him, a combination of professionalism and underlying weariness that suggested she was dealing with challenges beyond the normal stresses of restaurant work. He also noticed the small gold cross she wore around her neck and a simple ring on her right hand that looked like it might have sentimental value. Throughout the evening, as Lucia checked on his table and served other customers, Ozzy noticed several things that painted a picture of someone working under considerable pressure. She moved with the efficiency of someone who couldn't afford to waste time, switching effortlessly between English and Spanish when serving Latino customers, and occasionally Portuguese when speaking with the Brazilian busboy. Her breaks between tables were spent quickly checking her phone with obvious anxiety, and at one point, he overheard her speaking to the manager in a mixture of English and heavily accented phrases. "I'm really sorry, Mr. Peterson," Lucia explained to the manager during a brief conversation near Ozzy's booth, her accent becoming more pronounced when she was stressed. "I know Tuesday nights are usually slow enough for extra cleaning, but I have to pick up my daughter from my neighbors by 10:30. She's only 8, and I don't like her staying too late on school nights, you know?" "It's fine, Lucia," the manager replied with obvious respect for his employee. "You're one of our most reliable workers, and family comes first. Just make sure your section is properly reset for the morning shift." "Sim." "Yes, of course. Thank you for understanding," Lucia replied, relief evident in her voice. The brief exchange revealed several important details about Lucia's situation. She was a single mother working to support a young daughter. She was conscientious about her responsibilities both at work and at home, and she was clearly managing a delicate balance between earning income and caring for her child, all while navigating life in a country where she was still establishing herself. As the evening progressed and the diner began to empty out, Ozzy found himself in conversation with Lucia during one of her routine check-ins. What started as casual customer service dialogue gradually evolved into something more personal as Lucia's natural warmth and genuine interest in her customers created an atmosphere of comfortable conversation. Her accent, rather than being a barrier, seemed to add sincerity to her words, and Ozzy found himself drawn to her obvious dedication and positive attitude despite whatever challenges she was facing. "You know," Ozzy said during one of her visits to refill his coffee, "you seem to really care about your work here. That's not something you see everywhere these days." Lucia's face lit up with a genuine smile that transformed her tired features. "Thank you so much for saying that. I try to treat every customer the way I would want to be treated if I were dining out. Besides, this job means everything to me and my daughter. I cannot afford not to give it my best effort, you know?" Something in her tone, combined with the slight vulnerability that appeared when she mentioned her daughter, invited further conversation. Ozzy found himself genuinely curious about this young woman, who was clearly working hard to build a life for herself and her child in what was obviously a challenging situation. "You mentioned a daughter," he said carefully, not wanting to pry but sensing that Lucia might appreciate having someone to talk to who seemed genuinely interested. "That must be challenging, balancing work and motherhood, especially—" He paused, uncertain how to tactfully address what he suspected might be her immigrant status. Lucia's expression softened with the kind of love that appears whenever a devoted parent speaks about their child. "It is very challenging, but she is the best thing that ever happened to me. Her name is Isabella, we call her Bella, and she is 8 years old. She's incredibly smart and funny, and she makes every difficult day worth it. She is my reason for everything." "What about her father?" Ozzy asked gently, though the way Lucia's expression tightened slightly suggested this might be a painful topic. "He's not in the picture," Lucia replied simply, her voice carrying the matter-of-fact tone of someone who had accepted a difficult situation. "It has been just Bella and me since we came to America 3 years ago, but we manage. We are a good team, and we take care of each other." The phrase, "since we came to America," confirmed Ozzy's suspicions about Lucia's background, and he found himself even more intrigued by her story. He had always been drawn to people who showed courage in the face of adversity, and immigrating to a new country as a single mother clearly required extraordinary strength and determination. As the conversation continued over the next hour, with Lucia stopping by Ozzy's table during quiet moments between serving other customers, a fuller picture of her life began to emerge. Lucia was 27 years old and had been working at Mel's for 3 years, ever since arriving in Los Angeles from Sao Paulo, with hopes of building a better life for herself and Isabella. The journey to America had been neither easy nor straightforward. Lucia had worked as a hotel receptionist in Sao Paulo, but the economic situation in Brazil and limited opportunities for advancement had made it difficult to provide the kind of future she wanted for her daughter. When Isabella's father had abandoned them, leaving Lucia to face motherhood alone, she had made the difficult decision to use her savings to immigrate to the United States, believing that hard work and determination could create opportunities that simply didn't exist back home. "It was very scary," Lucia admitted during one of their conversations, her accent making her vulnerability even more touching. "I spoke some English from school, but not like now. Bella was only 5, and she was so confused about why we were leaving everything she knew. But I had this feeling that if I could just get us here, if I could work hard enough, we could build something better. The early months in Los Angeles had been particularly challenging. Lucia had found housing in a small apartment in a working-class neighborhood, enrolled Isabella in elementary school, and begun the exhausting process of building a life from scratch. She had started with a job washing dishes at a smaller restaurant, working her way up to server positions as her English improved and her confidence grew. The hardest part, Lucia confided, was that everything I had studied and worked for in Brazil didn't matter here. My hotel management experience, my customer service training, none of it counted because I didn't have American credentials. I had to start over completely, proving myself all over again. Despite the challenges, Lucia had persevered with remarkable determination. She had enrolled in online English as a second language courses, working to perfect her communication skills during Isabella's school hours. She had also begun taking business administration classes at a community college, hoping to eventually qualify for management positions that would provide better stability and benefits for her small family. "I want to give Bella all the opportunities I never had," Lucia explained, her voice filled with the universal hope of immigrant parents everywhere. "But sometimes it feels like I'm running so fast just to stay in the same place. The rent here is so expensive, and after childcare and school supplies and everything else, there's just no room for the extras that make childhood special." The pain in her voice was evident, the frustration of a loving parent who wanted to provide more for her child, but was constrained by the reality of supporting a family on a waitress's salary while pursuing education and building credentials in a new country. "Bella loves music so much," Lucia continued, her expression softening as she talked about her daughter's interests. "She hears the music from the school across the street sometimes when they have their band practice, and she stops everything just to listen. She asks about piano lessons, about violin, about guitar. She draws these beautiful pictures of musicians and writes little songs in Portuguese and English mixed together." Lucia's eyes filled with tears as she shared this part of her daughter's story. "There's a music school just 2 blocks from our apartment, and sometimes when we walk past, she slows down and listens to the lessons happening inside. But between rent, childcare, groceries, and trying to save money for my school books, there's just no way we can afford music lessons right now." The regret in her voice was heartbreaking, and Ozzy could see how much it pained her to deny her daughter something that clearly brought such joy. "She's so patient about it, though. She never complains or asks me why we can't afford things. She just says, 'Maybe when I'm older, Mama,' and goes back to drawing her pictures of pianos and guitars." Ozzy felt his heart breaking as he listened to Lucia's story. Here was a young woman who had immigrated to a foreign country as a single mother, was working incredibly hard to support her daughter while pursuing education to better their circumstances, and was clearly devoted to giving her child the best life possible, despite facing challenges that would have defeated many people. The love and dedication in her voice reminded him of his own mother, who had worked tirelessly to support their family during his childhood in Birmingham, and of immigrant families he had met throughout his travels, who embodied the same spirit of determination and sacrifice. "You're an amazing mother," Ozzy said sincerely, his voice carrying the weight of genuine admiration. "Isabella is incredibly lucky to have someone who cares so much about her future and who's willing to sacrifice so much to give her opportunities." Lucia's eyes filled with tears at the unexpected compliment from this kind stranger. "Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I worry that I'm not doing enough, that she's missing out on things because of our situation. I see other kids with their music lessons and art supplies and sports teams, and I wish I could give her all of that. I worry that she'll resent me for bringing her here when life was simpler in Brazil. Love and dedication are worth more than any music lesson," Ozzy replied, thinking about his own children and the lessons he'd learned about parenting over the years. The fact that she has a mother who works so hard and cares so much, that's the most valuable gift you could give her. And the courage you've shown by starting over in a new country, that's something she'll understand and appreciate when she's older. "I hope so," Lucia said softly. "Sometimes when I'm working late shifts like this, I think about her at home doing her homework alone, and I wonder if I'm making the right choices. But then I remember why we came here, for opportunities, for a future where she can be anything she wants to be." As the evening wound down and the diner approached closing time, Ozzy realized that this conversation had affected him more deeply than he had expected. Lucia represented everything he admired about human resilience and determination, and her story had reminded him of the courage it takes to leave everything familiar behind in pursuit of a better life. Her dedication to Isabella, her work ethic, and her positive attitude despite facing significant challenges had touched something deep in his soul. The immigrant experience was something Ozzy understood in his own way. While he had never left his home country permanently, his journey from the working-class streets of Birmingham to international fame had required leaving behind everything familiar and comfortable, reinventing himself in foreign environments, and constantly proving his worth to people who initially saw him as an outsider. When Lucia brought his check, Ozzy looked at the total, $18, $50 for his burger, fries, and multiple cups of coffee, and made a decision that would change Lucia's life forever. This young woman and her daughter deserved to have some of their dreams come true, deserved to experience the kind of security and opportunity that would allow Isabella to pursue her musical interests, and Lucia to focus on her education without constantly worrying about basic necessities. He pulled out his credit card and wrote in a tip amount that made him smile as he imagined Lucia's reaction. $50,000. More money than Lucia probably made in an entire year, enough to transform her and Isabella's circumstances completely and provide the security and opportunities they had been working so hard to achieve. On the receipt, in the space typically reserved for brief messages, Ozzy wrote in careful handwriting, "For Isabella's piano lessons and everything else your beautiful family deserves. You are an amazing mother and an inspiration to everyone who meets you. Keep being wonderful and know that your courage and dedication have not gone unnoticed. With respect and admiration, a friend who believes in dreams coming true." He left the receipt on the table and quietly made his way toward the exit, hoping to avoid the inevitable scene that would occur when Lucia discovered what he had done. But as he reached the door, he heard her voice behind him, calling out in a mixture of English and Portuguese. "Sir, por favor, please excuse me," Lucia called out, her voice carrying a mixture of confusion, panic, and disbelief. "I think there's been a terrible mistake with your receipt. The numbers, they don't make sense." Ozzy turned around to see Lucia standing by his former table, holding the receipt with shaking hands, her face pale with shock and complete disbelief. Her eyes were wide, and she was staring at the paper as if it might spontaneously combust. "There's no mistake, love," Ozzy said gently, removing his sunglasses so she could see his eyes clearly and understand that he was completely serious. "You and Isabella deserve every bit of that and so much more." Lucia stared at the receipt again, her hands trembling so violently that she could barely hold the paper steady. $50,000, she whispered in English, then repeated the amount in Portuguese. $50,000. This cannot be real. This cannot be happening to me. "It's real," Ozzy assured her, walking back toward where she stood on legs that seemed to have forgotten how to function properly. "You work harder than anyone should have to. You're raising a beautiful daughter with love and dedication in a country where you had to start over from nothing, and you deserve to have some of your dreams come true." The reality of what was happening began to sink in, and Lucia felt her entire world shift beneath her feet. The receipt represented more than money. It represented security, opportunity, hope, and the validation that her sacrifices and hard work had been seen and valued by someone who understood their significance. "Meu Deus, my God," she whispered, her voice breaking as tears began to flow freely down her cheeks. "I cannot accept this. This is too much money. I don't understand why you would do this for someone you don't even know." Her legs suddenly gave out beneath her, and she collapsed into the nearest booth, the receipt still clutched in her trembling hands as the magnitude of this unexpected gift overwhelmed her completely. She was sobbing now, not from sadness, but from a combination of relief, gratitude, disbelief, and the overwhelming realization that her and Isabella's lives had just changed forever. "You can accept it, and you should accept it," Ozzy said, sitting down across from her in the booth, his expression gentle and understanding. "Sometimes good things happen to good people, and you're definitely one of the good ones. Sometimes the universe decides to reward courage and dedication, and today is your day." Lucia was sobbing now, switching between English and Portuguese as her emotions overwhelmed her ability to think clearly in her second language. "Você não entende. You don't understand," she managed to say between tears. Next month, I was going to have to choose between paying rent or keeping Bella in her after-school art program. I've been lying awake at night trying to figure out how to make everything work, how to keep us from falling behind. Now you don't have to choose, Ozzy said simply, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who understood the power of life-changing moments. Now, Isabella can have piano lessons and art supplies and whatever else makes her happy. Now you can focus on your studies without working double shifts and worrying about whether you can afford textbooks. The other employees in the diner had noticed the commotion and gathered around, initially concerned that something was wrong, but gradually understanding that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Mr. Peterson, the manager, approached the table with obvious concern for his employee, having never seen the composed and professional Lucia in such an emotional state. "Lucia, is everything okay?" he asked in both English and Spanish, noting her emotional state and the receipt still clutched in her hands like a precious artifact. Lucia looked up at him, her face streaked with tears, but glowing with joy and disbelief. "Mr. Peterson, Esther Homem, this man She couldn't finish the sentence in either language, instead handing him the receipt with shaking hands. Mr. Peterson's eyes widened as he read the tip amount, and he looked at Ozzy with new understanding and recognition. "You're Ozzy Osbourne," he said, not as a question, but as a statement of realization. "That I am," Ozzy replied with a slight smile. "And Lucia here is one of the most dedicated and hard-working employees you'll ever have. She's also one of the bravest people I've ever met. Treat her well." Word of what had happened spread quickly through the diner, and soon Lucia was surrounded by her co-workers, fellow immigrants from Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, and other countries who understood exactly what this moment meant for someone in her situation. They were all celebrating this incredible turn of events, offering congratulations in multiple languages, and sharing in the joy of seeing someone they cared about receive such an unexpected blessing. The diverse group of employees represented a miniature United Nations of people who had all taken risks and made sacrifices to build better lives in America, and they understood better than anyone the significance of what had just happened to their colleague. "No sé cómo agradecerle." "I don't know how to thank you," Lucia said to Ozzy, as the initial shock began to wear off and she could speak more coherently, though her accent was still thicker than usual due to her emotional state. "This changes everything for Isabella and me. Everything. Our whole future just became different." "You don't need to thank me," Ozzy replied, touched by her genuine gratitude and the obvious impact this would have on her family. "Just keep being the amazing mother you are, and give Isabella a hug from an old rocker who believes in her future and her dreams." "She's going to be so excited about the piano lessons," Lucia said, laughing through her tears as she began to imagine her daughter's reaction. "She's going to think I'm joking when I tell her. She's always so patient when I say we have to wait for things, but now I can say yes." The story of Ozzy's incredible generosity toward Lucia spread rapidly through social media and news outlets, becoming a symbol of how unexpected kindness could transform lives and highlighting the struggles faced by immigrant families working to build better futures for their children. The incident brought attention not only to Ozzy's well-known charitable nature, but also to the broader challenges faced by single mothers, immigrants, and working families trying to achieve the American dream. For Lucia, the tip was indeed life-changing in ways that extended far beyond the immediate financial impact. She was able to pay off her debts, move to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood with excellent schools, and reduce her work hours so she could focus more intensively on her education. The financial security allowed her to take fewer shifts at the diner and concentrate on her business administration degree, setting the stage for a career that would provide better opportunities and stability for her family. Isabella did indeed start piano lessons at the music school she had admired from afar, and her natural talent became evident almost immediately. She also joined art classes and began participating in school programs that had previously been financially out of reach. More importantly, the experience taught both mother and daughter that kindness and generosity still existed in the world, and that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected sources. It wasn't just the money, Lucia would later explain to reporters who asked about the impact of that evening. It was the fact that someone saw me, really saw me, and recognized that I was working hard and trying to do right by my daughter. That recognition, that validation of my efforts meant almost as much as the financial help itself. The extra financial security also allowed Lucia to visit Brazil for the first time since immigrating, taking Isabella to meet her grandparents and extended family who had only known the little girl through video calls and photographs. The trip helped Isabella understand her cultural heritage and strengthen the family bonds that distance had made difficult to maintain. Lucia eventually completed her business degree with honors and started her own small import business, specializing in Brazilian food products and handicrafts. Her experience as an immigrant gave her unique insights into serving the Brazilian community in Los Angeles, and her business grew steadily as word spread about her quality products and excellent customer service. More importantly, the experience inspired Lucia to help other immigrant families whenever possible. She established a small scholarship fund for children of immigrants who wanted to pursue music or art education, using a portion of the money Ozzy had given her to create opportunities for other families facing similar challenges. Years later, when Isabella had become an accomplished young pianist and was performing in school concerts and community events, she would often dedicate her performances to the kind stranger who believed in my dreams before I even knew I had them. Lucia would tell the story of that night at Mel's Diner, emphasizing not just the financial generosity, but the human kindness and recognition that had meant so much to a struggling immigrant mother. The mother and daughter also maintained a tradition of visiting Mel's Diner every year on the anniversary of that life-changing evening, bringing flowers for the staff and sharing updates about their lives with Mr. Peterson and the other employees who had witnessed that extraordinary moment. And at Mel's Diner on Sunset Boulevard, there's still a booth that the employees call the Ozzy booth, where they remember the night when unexpected generosity reminded everyone that the American dream is still alive for those willing to work for it, and that sometimes angels appear in the most unlikely forms to help deserving people achieve their goals. The story became part of the diner's legend, inspiring staff members and customers alike with the reminder that every person has a story worth hearing, and that sometimes the smallest gesture of recognition and kindness can change the entire trajectory of someone's life. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of generosity and kindness, please consider leaving a like. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is hope, and the smallest act of kindness can change a life forever. Lucia and Isabella's story shows us that dreams really can come true when compassion meets opportunity, and that the courage to start over in a new country deserves to be recognized and rewarded.